Jaron Jarvis Channel, Top 20 Scary Stories of the Day from Reddit nosleep. 2018-09-16. Story 1, Instructions for the Babysitter. I've only been babysitting for about 6 months now. It was an easy way to make money and it didn't require me to have any real, applicable skills. It was slow going at first, but a couple of months ago I hit the jackpot after a young couple from the rich part of my town asked me to look after their 2 kids one Friday night. They paid me $200 to look after their extremely well-behaved children for 3 hours in a house 5 times the size of mine. It was awesome. The young couple must have also thought that I had done a good job because word spread quickly around the rich neighborhood about the nice, young lady who was willing to look over your children so you could go out for a night of drinking and fun. And when I say that this neighborhood is one of the richest in our state, I am not exaggerating. Most of the people living there are young couples who have come from a long line of wealthy families. Sometimes I'll babysit for a few of hours and make a couple $100. Other times the parents want me to stay the night while they go off and get a hotel room so that they could be away from their kids for a change. That is where I make the big bucks. A couple of days ago a husband and wife had texted me asking if I could stay the night at their mansion and watch their 7-year-old little girl for them. I happily agreed. If only I knew what I was in for. When the day finally came, I drove my beat-up Jeep Wrangler to the edge of the rich neighborhood and made my way up this private driveway that I had never noticed before because the entrance was hidden back amongst the trees that surround the entire north side of town. I drove up this steep, winding driveway for what seemed like 10 minutes before I finally saw the house come into view. Out of all the houses I've babysat, this was hands down the most gorgeous one I've ever seen. It was a huge Victorian-style mansion that was covered in dark brown bricks, making it blend perfectly into the woods surrounding it. I got out of my car and made my way up to the front porch where I knocked on this gigantic, wooden door. A few seconds later a beautiful woman in her mid-30s answered and introduced herself as Mrs. Collins. She called her husband down and shortly after an extremely handsome man also in his 30s came walking down the grand stairway holding an adorable little girl in his arms. The couple seemed very anxious to leave, and even though they were both gorgeous people, I could tell that underneath all of their beauty they were both extremely tired and haggard from having to keep up with their 7-year-old. They were obviously very excited about having an entire night to themselves and couldn't wait to get out of there as fast as they could. Before Mr. and Mrs. Collins left, however, Mrs. Collins handed me several pieces of paper and told me that she had written down a couple of instructions for me to follow throughout the night. She stressed to me how important it was to follow her instructions, and I assured her that I'd give them a look. I waved to the pretty young couple as they made their way down the driveway in their expensive Mercedes and then closed the door behind me. I gave the instructions a quick once-over before folding the papers and stuffing them into my back pocket. I'll look at them later, I told myself. How stupid I was to do that. Mr. and Mrs. Collins' daughter, Samantha, was a very nice, young girl who warmed up to me almost immediately, and we had spent the next few hours playing games and watching TV. After we finished our 5th episode of Teen Titans Go, I noticed that it was getting late and asked Samantha what her bedtime was. She shrugged, not really giving me an answer, which is when I remembered Mrs. Collins' instructions. I pulled out the folded pieces of paper and scanned through them very quickly when I saw the words "Samantha needs to be in bed." Before 8 p.m. I checked the time to find that it was almost 7:45. Well, it looks like your bedtime is right now, I said. Lift Samantha up off the couch so I could get her ready. She brushed her teeth and I tucked her into her California king-sized mattress. I told her good night and was leaving her room when she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "Don't forget to lock my door before you leave," she said. I stopped walking and turned back around toward her, confused. "What do you mean, don't forget to lock your door?" I asked. "Why would I need to lock your door? What if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night?" She looked at me innocently and shrugged her shoulders again. "I don't know, but Mommy always locks my door before I go to sleep. She says she does it to protect me and herself. I don't remember what happens after I fall asleep, but Mommy says that I always try to leave my room at night, which is bad thing." I looked at her dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say. Mommy told me that she would leave instructions for you to follow and locking my door is one of them. She sighed. Oh, okay Samantha, I'll lock your door. Good night sweetheart, I stammered. She gave me a big smile and rolled over in her bed. I closed her door and noticed that there was a latch drilled into the door frame that would allow someone to lock it from the outside. I closed the latch and then walked back downstairs so I could read the rest of Mrs. Collins' instructions. When I had first seen the pieces of paper, I was under the impression that they were just instructions that told me what shows Samantha is not allowed to watch, or how to operate the surround sound. After I started reading them though, I realized that I was wrong. I was completely and utterly wrong. Hello Annie. I'm so glad that you agreed to stay the night and babysit Samantha for us. She is such an angel, and I am sure that the both of you will get along very well. I know that our house might seem old and scary, but don't worry because nothing bad will happen to you as long as you follow some simple instructions. Firstly, Samantha needs to be in bed in her room with the door locked before 8 p.m. Do not open up her bedroom door after 8 p.m. I repeat, do not open Samantha's bedroom door after 8 p.m. She will try to convince you to open the door in many different ways. She will cry, scream, and threaten you until you give in. But do not listen to her. She can't hurt you as long as the door is closed. Between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m. make sure you remain in the living room with the lights turned on. Around this time of night you may hear scratching and growling coming from Samantha's room, or from other parts of the house. These noises are nothing to worry about as long as you stay in the living room. Watch some TV to pass the time. We have a lot of movies to choose from. Smile. After 9:30 do not venture into any dark areas of the house. I would recommend that you turn on as many lights as you can before 9:30 so that you don't accidentally trap yourself. You might begin to see things hiding in the dark areas of the house from time to time, and sometimes they will even try to talk to you. Just ignore them and they'll eventually ignore you as well. You might also happen to see a pair of yellow cat eyes looking at you through the darkness every once in a while. Do not stare at them for more than 30 seconds. At around 10 p.m. it might begin to sound like there are several people walking around in the basement downstairs. Do not worry because as long as you stay out of the basement they cannot get to you. I know it sounds unlikely, but around this time you will begin to feel an overwhelming urge to walk down into the basement. If this happens, go into the kitchen and drink a cold glass of milk. This usually helps. The urge will most likely pass after about 10 minutes, but if the urge is still there after 10 minutes and you don't think that you will be able to stop yourself from walking into the basement, then call either me or Mr. Collins and we'll tell you what to do. When 10:30 comes around you will begin to hear something running back and forth in the hallway upstairs. Stay on the first floor of the house during this time. Don't worry about Samantha. As long as you locked her door beforehand he won't be able to get to her. If you start to hear him making his way down the stairs, then lock yourself in the first floor bathroom with the lights on. He will knock on the bathroom door repeatedly and will try impersonating someone close to you like your mom or your dad in order to trick you into opening the bathroom door for him. He is really good at it. No matter what he says to you and no matter who he sounds like, do not open the door. He should go away after 5 minutes. Check under the door to make sure that he is no longer there before you open it. Now this next part is very important. You will be sleeping in our guest room upstairs for the night. Before you go to bed, make sure that you leave a plate outside your bedroom door with a piece of raw steak on it. You can find the raw steak in our refrigerator, and leave a glass of milk next to the plate as well. On a piece of paper write the words Park and Mihi in red ink and leave it on the plate with the raw meat. Also, at some point during the night you might wake up and notice that there is something standing in the corner of your room. Please refrain from looking at the figure as much as you can. I'd recommend wearing earbuds so that you won't hear it muttering to itself. And that's about it. There are also a few other general rules that you should follow throughout the night just to make sure that nothing bad happens. Rule 1, if the house phone rings at any point during the night, don't answer it no matter how long or how loud it might ring. Mr. Collins and I will call your cell phone if we need to talk with you. Rule 2, if you feel something tap you on the shoulder at any point during the night, don't turn around, and wait at least 30 seconds before moving again. Rule 3, don't eat meat after 8 o'clock. They might see it as a threat and will most likely attack you. Thanks again, Annie. If you have any trouble or questions, feel free to call me or my husband at any point during the night. If you do call us and a man with a very deep voice answers the phone, hang up immediately and try calling us again. P.S. Throughout the night you might hear a dog whimpering from somewhere off inside the house. We don't have a dog, so don't go looking for it. I hadn't realized what I had gotten myself into. It is currently 8:31 p.m. as I am writing this, and the growling noises just started. It sounds like they're coming from every room in the fucking house. I thought that Samantha's screams from a couple minutes ago were going to be the worst part, but now I can hear her muffled growls from upstairs, and I can assure you that this is worse. This is so much worse. Story 2, Patient 1023. Treatment Plan. Patient number 1023. Diagnosis, BPD, anxiety, depression, mild psychosis. Notes, 1023 was brought in after a violent incident involving, redacted, and the fire that burned down their home. Keep 1023 medicated at all times. This is for the safety of everyone. Do not refer to 1023 as his birth name or any variation of it. He will become violent. 1023 is generally friendly and polite. Keep 1023 medicated. Do not let him manipulate you. Do not let any other patients into 1023's room. Do not let 1023 talk to any other patients. If you notice other patients talking about 1023, move him to a different unit immediately. If 1015 is in the room, do not enter and get away from the room immediately. Do not let 1015 see you. Do not attempt to communicate with 1015. Leave 1015 alone. Do not attempt to put 1015 in restraints. Leave 1015 alone. Restraints and sedatives do not work. If you touch 1015, wash the affected area immediately. If you experience any irritation or a rash on the area, inform the nurses station immediately. If you smell something burning, seek emergency medical help. If 1015 comes near you, do not engage. Wait until 1015 leaves. Do not respond to 1015, no matter what he says. Do not let 1015 bait you. After 1015 leaves, up 1023's dosage. Do not attempt ECT. Remember what happened to Dr. Stout. Please keep 1023 heavily medicated. We have a separate file for 1015 as he visits often. Please do not engage 1015. Please. 1015 will steal things from you. Do not attempt to get them back. You will be compensated. 1023 needs medication twice a day. Upon waking and before bed. Keep conversation with 1023 to a minimum, but stay civil. Do not reveal personal information to 1023. Be aware that what you tell 1023 will get around to 1015. Do not leave male staff in the same room as 1023. When male staff are present, 1023 must be restrained and must wear a spit guard. Do not put your hands or face near 1023's mouth. Report any solicitation from 1023. Do not accept any offers or favors from 1023. Do not let 1023 tempt you. Do not solicit 1023. Anyone found engaging in inappropriate acts with 1023 will now be terminated and arrested on sight. Extreme offenders will be served. Keep physical punishment on 1023 to a minimum. No visible bruises. Beatings seem to work best. If 1015 comes into the room during a punishment, stop immediately and leave quickly. Do not engage. Do not apologize. Leave quickly. Please keep 1023 medicated. Please. 23A talking to 1015 is completely fine. Engaging with him is encouraged. 1015 has been fully reformed. 23B. 1023 should be weaned off his medication immediately. Release is to be scheduled soon. PLEs. Story 3, my roommate was a trauma nurse. My roommate Grace was a trauma nurse and emergency medic in a well-known international aid group. The job was thankless, difficult and unimaginably dangerous at times. Few people could deal with all the risks and stress it brought on a daily basis. Grace had been stationed in some of the most violent places on Earth, often for weeks or months at a time. Between navigating the bloody war zones and dealing with exposure to deadly diseases, it had more than its share of undesirable challenges. None of that mattered to her. She sought to help out her fellow man. Grace was dedicated to making the world a better place. I need to emphasize the personal sacrifices she made here and now. Whenever she came home, she just wanted to relax and unwind. I got that. I usually greeted her with a warm hug and then gave her a little space to decompress for a while. I think Grace appreciated not having to relive all the ugly horrors she survived. I didn't ask. She knew I was always there if she needed to talk or get things off her chest. After a lengthy sleep marathon to recover from 16 hours of jet lag, she popped her head out the bedroom door last month and asked me what was for dinner. I usually had something in mind when she was scheduled to be home. When she finally awoke and was ready to eat, I had it ready. Like a lot of people in public service, she didn't have any time for a social life. Her brief, infrequent visits home, around me, represented most of her social life. The sacrifices she made in helping others were many, but like anyone else, she had needs. Physical needs. I know she could have done a lot better than me, but to my credit, I was considerate, willing and conveniently present. Those were big pluses in my favor. With her life and career being so complicated and unpredictable, she didn't need a significant other pressuring her to settle down. I didn't rock the boat. I accepted the situation for what it was. A roommate with benefits arrangement. Despite the incredible intimacy we shared each time she returned home, I tried not to let my feelings get away from me. It seemed one-sided. She gave off a "don't push it" vibe. I wanted more, but I didn't want to risk what I already had with her. The day after her arrival, she told me she wasn't feeling very well. I gave her some headache medicine and a cool washcloth for her head. We slept in our own beds afterward. That was the rule established to maintain emotional boundaries. The next morning I knocked on Grace's bedroom door. She didn't answer, so I opened it a crack to check on her. I was startled to see that her face was puffy and swollen. She was sweating profusely and covered in clusters of red splotches. Her body temperature was 102.7. I poured a capful of medicine to bring her fever down and filled up a large water bottle to help her stay hydrated. I hated to leave, but my students in the classroom would be arriving soon. It was too short of a notice to arrange for a substitute. Grace smiled and assured me she'd be all right. After all, she was home. It was the one place in the whole world she could afford to be sick. Shortly before I left the house, I took a wet washcloth and wiped down her angry, inflamed skin. She smiled and thanked me for being so good to her. Can you imagine that? A person who devoted their whole life to helping others on a daily basis was thanking me for trying to ease her discomfort. She was a true saint. It was as close to a traditional relationship as I'd ever have with her. I didn't call home on my lunch break. I was afraid Grace was asleep. She needed the rest, so I left her be. In hindsight, that was a huge mistake. By the time I arrived home, she was nearly dead. Blood and vomit was everywhere. She had soiled the bed. Her skin was covered in festering hemorrhagic sores. Infected blood was oozing from every orifice. The bedroom looked like a crime scene. Only then did I realize that she had no ordinary sickness. I covered her face with a freezer bag of ice cubes to bring the fever down and called paramedics. They took one look at her and immediately ran back out of the house like it was on fire. I thought they were abandoning her. The truth was, they went to retrieve their specialized, hazardous safety gear. After a quick examination of Grace while in full body protective suits, they placed a HEPA mask on me and rushed both of us to the ambulance. On the ride, they grilled me on background questions to prep the high-risk medical team. They asked if she'd recently visited West Africa, specifically Sierra Leone, Guinea, or Liberia. No one used the E word, but we were all thinking it. I told them she was a humanitarian aid worker and traveled all over the world to help inoculate people in remote villages. It was entirely possible she'd visited those specific countries and could have come into contact with any number of deadly diseases. I assumed the organization she worked for has quarantine protocols in place when viral contamination was detected in the staff. If they do, it apparently failed. Then came the really sensitive questions. Had I came in physical contact with her or anyone else since Grace's arrival at the house? I immediately told them we had been intimate the night before. Then I admitted that I washed her irritated skin with a wet washcloth after she exhibiting the 102.7-degree fever. The questioning paramedic actually gasped in shock, but his dismay was about to grow infinitely worse. I disclosed that I just came home from teaching 6 full classes of 3rd graders after wiping down her inflamed skin. I just shook my head and wept after that. I didn't know. She didn't either. We didn't see it coming. It was all very clear in hindsight, but at the time, it seemed like Grace just had a regular flu or a severe cold. I plead with the EMTs to understand it wasn't deliberate or malicious, but they were cold and indifferent. It was their job to save lives. At that point it included their own. I could see the mounting terror in their eyes through the hazmat masks. Their safety gear wasn't rated for that level of danger or contagious biological agent. Not to mention that they walked right into the house, unprotected. I heard bits and pieces of the panicked radio correspondence between the driver and emergency crew, standing by. Unsurprisingly, we drove right past the hospital. They decided to fly us straight to the CDC in Atlanta. I didn't know it at the time, but federal emergency management agencies had just been deployed to assess the deadly situation and determine the dizzying threat level that she and I had inadvertently caused. The risk management team started evaluating quarantine procedures and who needed medical attention. I was still asymptomatic but mentally felt horrible. I had touched dozens of my students. They had no doubt touched countless others. Brothers, sisters, friends, their parents, etc. Ordinarily, casual contact between persons wasn't enough to spread regular diseases, but E and other hemorrhagic fevers are incredibly contagious and easy to spread. They are passable, even before a victim exhibits any symptoms. I was the potential angel of death for hundreds, or even thousands. The thought made me throw up. Of course, the mobile hazmat crew assumed I was starting to show signs. At the time, my temperature was only 100 degrees. I assured them I felt fine, but they weren't interested in my uneducated, naive opinion. I was the very person who possibly spread Ebola to hundreds of school children, parents, staff members, and medical personnel. Every parent or guardian to my 159 regular students were quarantined as a precaution and monitored very closely. A loving action like a simple kiss on the cheek could possibly spread this insidious virus. Even with the single-parent households, that meant a possibility of 211 more secondary exposures. It had an ugly domino effect. All teachers, staff members and their immediate families could be affected. Some of my students had extracurricular activities like sports or ballet too. Their coaches and instructors were at high risk, as were their spouses and children. Calling this situation a nightmare was too kind. Literally thousands of innocent people had potential exposure to Ebola through my careless actions and infected fingertips. Midway through the flight, I started feeling death in my bones. My fever spiked. I had chills, spontaneous vomiting and the classic symptoms of the ravenous disease. Grace was much, much worse. Her kidneys and several other organs were shutting down. The transport plane had some life-saving equipment, but it wasn't made to deal with that level of catastrophic attack on the human body. It was supposed to be a sterile containment vessel. The moment we touched down, they intended to go in and irradiate the quarantine area to cleanse and sterilize it. If I hadn't been channeling death at the time myself, I might have been more alarmed by what I saw on the runway. Heavily armed soldiers flanked our medical entourage. The news media had leaked the story and MPs were preventing a mob of angry protesters from vigilante justice and flamethrowers. To be honest, I felt so horrible about the situation that I wouldn't cared. We were escorted by armored vehicle to the relative security of the CDC. There were 75 beds set aside for the Ebola exposure. The NSA had other facilities prepared if the numbers grew beyond that. I felt like I'd handed hundreds of people a death sentence, but my primary concern was Grace. They started her on the strongest antiviral medications known to modern science and life support machines, but it didn't look good. Worse still, this outbreak was putting some of the greatest minds in medicine at risk as they treated us. Vomit, blood, urine, and feces. All the bodily fluids that came from us was contaminated with one of the most contagious and deadly pathogens in the world. We were producing hundreds of pounds of highly toxic medical waste on top of everything else, but I was too ill to care. My fever lingered around 105 for days, despite the powerful battery of drugs and world-class medical care. My own life hung in the balance. Grace went into a coma and died the next day. We were separated by a partition, so I wasn't aware. It's a good thing I didn't know. I wouldn't survived if I had. The doctors and medical staff kept the truth from me to prevent crushing my spirit. Her body was cremated to prevent the spread of post-mortem infection. Her family attended a private memorial a week before I was released. As far as the domino fallout, we were relatively lucky. Only 11 other people came down with the infection. Because of early detection, they eventually made a full recovery. I'm grateful of that every day. Grace was the first and only fatality out of the unlucky 13, as the press dubbed us. Now, after a month to gain my strength back, I've set out to write this op-ed piece in the Times to tell a little bit about who Grace Strathmore was. Also, who she was not. I've read and watched news features branding her some sort of irresponsible tourist or a Typhoid Mary agent of Ebola. Nothing could be further from the truth. She risked everything to help people caught up in the horrors of war and abject poverty. Ultimately, that unselfish sacrifice cost her life. I knew her as well as anyone. Grace would have been absolutely mortified if she ever found out what happened because of her accidental exposure. It wasn't intentional and it wasn't negligence on her part or mine. She isn't here to speak for herself or clear her name of the outright lies or distorted facts about her. I stand today to rectify that injustice. She was my roommate, friend and confidant. She was the very essence of Grace. Story 4, Missed Calls. I'm still shaken up. Wanted to share my story. I recently have had some unnerving things happen to me and I decided I wanted to share my story here just in case something happens to me. A few months ago I received a missed call on my iPhone from a number not in my phone book. I called the number back a couple of hours later but there was no answer. I went on with my evening and then went to sleep that night, thinking nothing of it. When I woke up in the morning I noticed that I had 6 missed calls from that same number. I immediately thought it was strange that I'd have so many. So I was concerned that it may be a family member or friend trying to contact me about something urgent. I immediately called back. No answer. I tried to call the number a few more times, but again no answer. I sent a group message to my parents and siblings, I have a brother and sister, to see if any of them had tried to contact me. They all responded saying that they hadn't. I thought it was quite weird but there was nothing I could do, so I just put it out of my mind. I woke up the next morning and checked my phone to find that I had 27 missed calls. Now that is a lot of missed calls to receive in the night, so I called the number back and again the number rang off. No answer. I thought maybe my phone was glitching and telling me I had missed calls when I didn't or something. I'd not seen the phone ring with this number. I always discovered the missed calls later. I noticed that all the missed calls I'd received were between 12 and 1:30 a.m. I usually go to sleep at about 11. So I decided that night to stay up until 1:30 a.m. and see if I could actually pick up one of these calls. I sat up and just watched a movie on Netflix, waiting for a call from the number. But 1:30 a.m. came and went with no call. So I thought, fuck it, there is no way I'm staying up any later than this just waiting for a call that probably won't come anyway. So I woke up the next morning feeling pretty calm, expecting not to see any other calls from the number. However, when I looked at my phone I was alarmed to see that I had 93 missed calls. Now this wasn't just alarming because of the extremely high volume of missed calls, but also for another reason. A penny dropped for me when I saw the 93 missed calls. The last 3 nights' calls had been 6 missed calls, 27 missed calls and 93 missed calls. My birthday's on the 27th June and I was born in 1993. So I was immediately freaked out by this. It also felt like a lot of effort to go to just to fuck with me if it was a friend or maybe my brother fucking around. I actually called my brother that day to see if it was him playing an elaborate prank on me. He's the only person in my family I could imagine maybe doing that. But he was adamant that it wasn't him and he didn't give me any cause to think he was lying. I live on my own, so as you can imagine I did struggle a bit to sleep that night. I had my phone next to my bed and I decided to leave it on ring so that if I got a call that night it would wake me and I'd be able to answer it. When I woke up in the morning, knowing that I hadn't been woken by a call, I was relieved. It must have stopped. But I looked at my phone and again I had missed calls from the number, this time 9 of them. The next 2 nights I received more calls, 14 one night and 18 the next. By this point I was really pretty freaked out and I really hoped the calls would stop. The next morning I woke up. No calls. Not one single fucking call. As you can imagine I was pretty damn happy. Now I didn't receive any more calls after this, so I quickly just put it down to nothing and moved the fuck on with my life. Thank God, right? Forgot all about it and haven't thought about it since. Until yesterday, that is. Yesterday I had a missed call from my sister who's 21. I text her back just to see what she'd tried to call me about. She texted me back saying that she was going out that night and could I come pick her up from her friends later. We always do each other favors and pick each other up when one of us is going out, so I said sure. She told me she'd send me the address later as she didn't know it right now. So the evening rolls around and I get a message from my sister. It's just an address. No hi or hello. No kiss at the end of the message, which she usually sends. But I spoke to her about this earlier, so I thought nothing of it. I send her a message back saying, do you want me to pick you up now? I get a message back saying yes. I hop in my car and it's around midnight. I put the address in my GPS and just set off to go pick her up. Now I'm driving along listening to music loud and I notice that the GPS is taking me out of the city and into the surrounding countryside. I figure her friend must live in the country. I pull down a side road and keep going. It's pretty deserted, but I see a house at the end of it. Must be the place. I pull up outside the house and I send a text to my sister. I'm outside. So I sit in my car and wait for her to come out. I get a reply back saying come knock on the door. I get out of my car kind of pissed off that she's making me get out of the car. It's now that I notice that the house is totally deserted. It's got broken windows and is ransacked. Something is totally not right. The front door to the house swings open and I see a figure standing there in all black. Now I'm just in flight or fight survival mode. I dart back to my car, get in and lock the doors. I start the engine as I see the dark figure walking down the front stairs of the house. I reverse down the street as I see the figure walking closer. But as I keep reversing I'm quicker and it disappears out of sight along with the house until I reach the main road. I drive away fast, shaken up. Not looking back. I immediately call my sister as I'm still driving. She picks up totally calm. And I rant about her playing this trick on me and totally lose my shit as she tries to calm me down. She tells me that she didn't go out that night and she's home at mom and dad's. I tell her about her missed call and texts and she says she hasn't tried to call me or text me that day. So I'm obviously really shaken up and I drive back to my mum's and dad's house, where they all try to calm me down as I explain to them what happened. My sister doesn't have the messages on her phone, and neither do I. As I'm trying to find the missed call I have from her, I scroll back on my phone and see the calls from a few months ago and remember the missed calls I received. I notice the last 3 calls I received again, in particular: 9 missed calls, 14 missed calls, 18 missed calls. The date yesterday was 14th of September 2018. I'm still at my parents' and beyond terrified, to be honest. I just wanted to share my story. I'll update you if anything else happens. Story 5, my new house is haunted as fuck. Before I begin, I'd like to say that I have never been interested nor believed in spirits/demons before moving into my new house. I was raised agnostic, and my parents made sure that wouldn't change. It's also good to point out that neither the landlord or the girls that lived here previously said anything about the house being extremely haunted. Which makes sense in some aspects, but fuck, come on now. About a month ago my old roommate and I moved into a new house with 3 other guys that go to the same university as us. The house was built in the mid-1800s and is known as a historic house. It has an official plaque at the front of it stating that there were a few mayors that once lived here. The house looks like a cottage with rouged red bricks and a deteriorating white paint around the windows. I was the first to move into the house, while the rest would start pouring in a couple days later. Walking in for the first time, I could smell the old scent it provided. The floorboards would creak with every other step, which filled the void of omnipresent silence. In a few short trips I hauled everything into my new room and set up a TV in the main living room where I'd end up watching Netflix later that night. About halfway through my show I heard 4 footsteps upstairs. These footsteps were loud, as if someone was walking around with steel-toe boots. My stomach dropped instantly and I paused the show in complete awe of what I had just heard. It had been 2 months since the girls moved out, so my initial thought was that there was a squatter upstairs. After 2 minuets I finally got the balls to get up and look around the house. I went to the kitchen first to pick up a knife before heading upstairs. With my heart about to pound out of my chest, I opened the door where I assumed the noise came from. There was no one. At least no one physically there, because it felt like someone was in that room with me. I could literally feel eyes watching me as I paced around the room. After a few minuets I headed back downstairs, completely fazed by what had just happened. Nothing else happened the next few days, which instilled thoughts that I was just tripping and that my anxiety manifested the feeling I felt. Later that week my old roommate and a new roommate finally got to the house. This made everything better and I finally felt safe for the first time since moving in. That was until I had my second encounter. Almost a week went by since the first 2 roommates got to the house. We were in the main living room playing Fortnite on 2 TVs trying to get dubs. I handed one of the roommates the controller since I died. This led to him and I switching places so he could get the spot that sees the TV better. I ended up on the couch facing our second living room area, which was right next to the room we were at. As I was watching the TVs I could see a dark figure peer out from the corner of my eye in the second living room. What I saw was horrifying. It was a tall man, maybe 6'3" in a partially ripped black sweater. His left eye was missing and his jaw was crooked, almost as if it was going to fall off. Simply the most grotesque person I had ever seen. I screamed in complete terror and pissed off both my roommates until their eyes fell onto what I was staring at. We all couldn't move. After a few seconds we realized that he was slowly walking towards us, so we dipped out the front door. After about 30 minutes outside we finally went back in. No man in sight, so we sat in the living room for the next few hours barely saying any words. In the last 3 weeks I have seen the man 2 times, and heard footsteps, which always come from upstairs, 2 times. Both times I saw him he appeared as a black figure, to which I was unable to make out his facial features. We are becoming restless. I've stayed at the house less than 75% of the time since that first night. I luckily have a friend that is always cool with me staying over. The other roommates avoid the house whenever they can, often sleeping at their girlfriend's house or another friend's. We contacted our landlord, who initially tried to gaslight us before finally confessing that he knew about the man. We're currently trying to find a new house. Next week we are getting a preacher to bless the house, which I surprisingly don't oppose. From these experiences I'm now questioning my beliefs as an agnostic. I've seen my roommates pray together to stop the occurrences, which actually work most of the time. I have no idea how the girls before us stayed here for over a year. Story 6, someone is posting weird pictures of me on Instagram. It had been a peaceful morning. I woke up at like 7 because of the light entering the window, sometime before the alarm sounded. I went to the kitchen to prepare some coffee and eat some M&S cookies, then had breakfast while the rest of my parents eventually woke up. My mom had a training day at a pretty fancy hotel, so she drove there, leaving me at the 3rd and 108th, where I had to continue walking until reaching the pitch, where I found the rest of the team. We had a game in Madariaga, a town that was a 45 minutes bus trip from Villa Gesell, our city. We arrived more or less at 10, put on the football clothes, heated up, had a little talk with the coach and won 3-0. It was supposed to be an easy game. To my surprise, not in a good way, after the game the coach informed us that the bus was not leaving until the teams are divided by categories, where 14 to 15-year-olds are the 6th division, 15 to 16, the 5th, and so on. We were gonna stay until the last category played, so we would be leaving at approximately 5 p.m. My dad had given me some money to buy lunch and I didn't want to stay there watching the other teams, so I walked a few blocks and after 20 minutes took the Montemar, the bus to Gesell. This was a longer trip since the Montemar had to stop in some towns in between, but according to the driver I would be home at 2:30, and that was better than a 4 hours wait. I always like to go in the back of the bus, so that's where I headed. After some minutes playing Flow Free on my phone, I noticed that the back of the sit in front of me had 2 things written, some dumb joke about President Macri and an Instagram account. I don't know if writing your Insta username in a bus sit is a thing where you all live, but it was pretty normal here. You could find them written in dubsies too. I never got why in hell people would do that, but since I was bored and had a 90-minute trip ahead of me, I decided to check out the account, at Doug Maldonado. The first thing that caught my attention was the name Doug, since I had never seen anybody with that name in this country, though it wouldn't be the first time someone calls himself something in social media. I know a dude called Mariano Alvarez who changed his name to Emmanuel Carreño because the Carreños are a family of thugs known in the city. The account was nothing extraordinary, selfies alone, with friends, some older ones with his girlfriend. Doug was a pretty average-looking dude with light brown skin, tall and skinny, with a tattoo of a crown on his neck. I was getting bored of scrolling through his account when I saw something that looked familiar. I opened the photo and it was a picture of the club where I played, but it looked weird, although it gave me the certainty that this dude's name wasn't Doug. You would get badly roasted there with a name like that. First, Doug was nowhere to be seen, which was strange since he seemed to love taking pictures of himself. The angle didn't seem natural, it seemed like it had been taken from a security camera, although I didn't know they had those there. It also had a timestamp in the lower right corner, but obviously there are apps for that. You can't zoom in too much a picture on Instagram, but when I gave it a closer look, there was somebody with black hair and a red sports sweater just like one that I have. When I looked back at the timestamp, it was obvious that it was me since I had been there at that day and time. I went back up in his timeline to look for the people who followed him, but he had like 108 followers and I didn't know any of them. How was it that this dude and I played in the same club and I didn't know him or any of his followers? I went back to the picture, that had a caption like El Fútbol es mi vida, football, romantic face, flexed biceps, football, and saw that it had exactly 4 likes and 4 comments. The likes and the comments, that didn't say anything, there were just emojis, were from the same people. I decided, now I read this, I put this like I decided to deploy the British forces in Gallipoli. It was just pressing a button on an app, to enter their accounts too. The first, @aripano_, was from a girl. Again, the account generally was pretty boring, just selfies with people that I didn't know, but there was one picture that looked familiar. It was clearly the school where I go, and it seemed like it was taken from a moving car, with a very low quality camera. This one didn't have a caption, likes or comments. It didn't have a timestamp, but again I could kind of recognize myself in there. It seems like it had been taken last Monday, when after school I had stayed a while to play cards with my buddy Alan and my classmates Yasmin and Julieta. I was there with my blue big Uniqlo coat, and they were there too. At that point I thought it was a very weird coincidence, so partly amused and partly a little scared I went back to the original pic and entered the second commenter's account. It was again a girl, at Paulito_Vidal. I started to get a bit worried when the same thing happened with her timeline, out of chronological order. There was a picture of the bus I took every Monday after school, and it was me in the same blue coat I was wearing before, on the last sit row. It also didn't have any likes, caption or comments. I started to think that since nobody had seemed to notice the photo, maybe it was some glitch in the app that was only happening on my phone, and that's why all of these pictures from weird angles had me on them. Now I think about it, that didn't really make any sense, but I needed to make some theory to calm myself down. The third commenter was a dude who looked younger than me, at Bossatincho. This time I had to scroll a little more to find it, but again, there it was. This one was different though. It had no captions, likes or comments either, but it was a good quality picture of the front of the building where I live. I didn't appear on it, but well, my parents' apartment did. At this point I was absolutely freaked out. It was 4 pictures in a row already. What is going on? Who could be behind this? Why specifically me? I was lucky, was I? That the back of the bus was empty and the other passengers couldn't see my expression of pure incredulity and fear. Up to now it still is a kind of scary story, but you might be thinking, why post it on r/nosleep? Where's the paranormal part? Well, here it comes. The fourth commenter was again a dude, although I was starting to think the accounts were all ran by the same person, at Centenarial. The picture that I found there, I don't really want to check, but I think made me pee my pants. It was again bad quality and it had a timestamp, Wed the 13th of July 2018, 2:26. It was dark and not very clear if you didn't know what you were looking at, but unfortunately I was very familiar with what appeared there. It was my bedroom. Although it could barely be seen, I could recognize the bunk where me and my sister sleep. She was right there, curled up under the sheets. I was in the upper mattress, stretched over it. Whoever was behind this had snuck into my house in the middle of the night, taken that picture, and left leaving no traces. What I want you to understand is that, there's no way somebody can get there. To get into our apartment you would need 3 keys, 1 for the building, 1 for the stairs, 1 for the apartment, and there's an alarm in case anybody enters without permission. Also, it's a very silent place. See, Villa Gazelle is a touristic city and the neighborhood where I live is mostly summer houses and hotels that are empty at this time of the year. Our own building has 10 apartments, and ours is the only not vacant one. If somebody opens the building door 3 floors behind us, we hear it. And this dude, thing or whatever just entered without us even noticing? Right now I can't think of any possible explanation for this. If you can think of anything, please comment. I guess I'll make this a series if something else happens. Story 7, every day is the same routine. The television was on too loud again. Hallelujah, the Jeff Buckley rendition, was playing. I could hear it through my headphones despite being upstairs from the source of the noise, and trying to blot it out with music of my own. Mum wakes up, she always sleeps before it begins, and storms down the stairs. There's many different walks in life. There's the walk you take to work, the hesitant walk into a morgue to see the corpse of a loved one and confirm their identity. Then there's her walk, the walk of a woman who's had to awaken to the same oppressive blurring noise every weekend for the past 10 years. He never understands why she's angry, why she says the horrible things she says. He thinks he's the victim. Maybe he is. She's not good at communicating her anger when she's topped up on wine and sleeping pills. Their argument soon overtakes even the sound of the television. The floor below me distorts their words, I only catch the occasional colorful profanity, and the rest is a mystery. I never do know what gets them screaming so viscerally at each other. Their past is unknown to me. We never talk much since Dad works all day and Mum isn't much of a talker at all. The most words I hear from both of them, when I get my most detailed glimpse at who they really are, is on those Saturdays where the TV gets turned up a few notches too much. It always ends with them going to bed in separate rooms. They haven't slept in the same bed since I was born. I managed to sleep shortly after. A few hours is all I need, so I can't be too bitter toward them. Then tomorrow begins, and I occupy my little world. My temple of procrastination. I play video games, listen to music, and await the night. The next day Dad comes home from work early. Too early. He sent a few too many wrong emails. He had the hangover to thank for that, I suppose. Apparently he was out of a job now. Their arguments are shorter when they aren't played out against Billy Idol's top hits of the 80s at 2 in the morning. They're also far less visceral without the influence of wine. Dad calls her a cunt and pleads for support, she says he's a worthless prick, then they go their separate ways to separate rooms in the house. Monday night, I dreaded it, I feared it, but there it was. The Rolling Stones was blaring throughout the house. I wouldn't be surprised if the whole street could hear it at 12 a.m. Mum wakes, I can hear her grumbling and stirring. Then her door swings open and the stairs have to bear the burden of her stomping feet as she draws closer to the source of the noise. My dad's a happy drunk, and he's glad to see her. He thinks she's come down to listen to music with him. He thinks this every weekend. Then she says something horrible, and he's confused and upset, and angry. He thinks he's the victim, maybe he is. It goes on, it ends, they sleep. I sleep. He doesn't wake early for work, and so he has an opportunity to stay up late, every day. And every day, she's angered by the sound coming from the TV, and every day she fails to communicate that thoroughly enough through alcohol and sleeping pill-addled rants about all my father's vices. My dad once again is angry, and upset. He handles this by listening to loud music, and getting drunk. Friday comes around, I feel numb. Maybe there's something I can do, but they're set in their ways, and so am I. I've got 3 more weeks in this shithole before university starts. Just 3 more weeks and I'll never have to come here again. Saturday, they're in the thick of it. She's berating him about how she missed an opportunity to start a family with his friend, he's nearly in tears telling her how much of a horrible bitch she is. I'm making a jam sandwich. Dragon Force is playing You Were Never There for Your Son. Always out getting drunk with Steve, and Craig, and all those other fucking idiots. So far away, we wait for the day. What difference did it make? I did my part by working. I brought money home. I was entitled to a drink. For the lives also wasted and gone, you aren't entitled to anything. You have a responsibility toward your child that you neglected. And now we'll lose the house, and I'll have to move in with my mum, who's dying, all because you couldn't even do a simple task. You fucking empty-headed fuck. We feel the pain of a lifetime lost in 1,000 days. You aren't going fucking anywhere. I'm not losing my partner over this shit. I'll get a new job, we'll stay together. Jeff's going to university, I'm not being alone, I can't handle that, Christy. Through the fire and the flames we carry on, Tilda. I passed by the doorway as they argued, and noticed something in my mother's hand. Christy. Put that fucking thing down. Don't be such a stupid drunken woman. Put the knife away. I'm not spending another day with you, you fucking shithouse. You scummy, lazy, fat old prick. As the red day is dawning, and the lightning cracks the sky, Tilda. It was a knife, it glimmered against the living room fireplace. I saw the fear in my dad's tear-filled eyes. He didn't know what to do, I didn't know what to do. I don't think even my mother truly knew what she was doing. All I knew is that something awful was about to happen. She raised it quickly, my dad barely reacted before it was buried in his face. He let out a spine-chilling cry of agony and befuddlement, and before I knew it her enraged form was upon him. The wine bottle was knocked over and smashed against the ground. soon all I could hear was fleshy thuds as the knife entered and left what used to be my father's face, which was now a fleshy lump. She plunged the knife deep into this knobbly red mess, then turned the television off. On the wings of a dream, so far beyond reality, she stumbled past me. I saw only fatigued relief in her. I stood in the threshold of the living room with my plate and simply stared absently at the space. It was all so ordered and normal bar my father's unidentifiable corpse. Even the way he sat below the neck was normal. There was still a wine glass in his hand. It was not the revolting smell of metallic blood and old wine filled my nostrils that sent me shrinking back, but the jarring silence. I shut the door, and went to bed, hoping when I woke and opened that door again, things would be the same. That their routine would begin anew, but another thought seemed to dominate my mind as I lay in bed staring at my wall. Perhaps it's for the best. The next morning, I didn't dare leave my bedroom. I simply sat on my computer, found my YouTube playlist, and video games became the staple of the day as I tried to distract myself from whatever was to come in regards to my father's death. I knew I'd lose my mother to the justice system. But I never had any plans to see either of them again when I went to university. So the day passed, the sun set, and my attention and emotional energy remained stalwartly tied to World of Warcraft. Then, as midnight turned to earliest morning, and darkness was fully settled over the world, I heard music coming from downstairs and my heart rate tripled in a second. I opened my door, and descended upon the living room as swiftly as I could. I faltered before the door. The smell of rot, and death, went straight to my stomach. I moved through regardless. The TV was on. A wine bottle, and a glass already filled, stood on the desk as a testament to normality. "Hi Jeff, lad. Hey, come here, listen to this." The music changed, Renegade by Styx. I approached him, and gave him a tight hug. "Hey, why are you doing that for?" he asked in a sympathetic tone but sharing the gesture nonetheless. "Listen, right on cue, my mother came storming down. She went to let out her first of a barrage of obscene words, but stopped when she saw me. Her mouth faltered. Both of you listen," I pleaded, wet-eyed and tired of it all. "I wasn't going to leave them like this. Please. Let's just talk for a moment. As a family." My mum and dad shared their first sincere look in what felt like forever, and then my father took the remote and turned down the volume. Story 8, A demon was following me during my darkest time. I have been reading everyone's posts about their paranormal experiences, so I decided to share mine. I am a 100% believer that demons will attach themselves to you during your weakest moments. When I was 14, I was in a rough state. I was severely depressed, cutting, and becoming more and more withdrawn from everyone and everything. My mom took me to doctors to try and help me, but nothing really worked. One day I had forced myself to go out with some friends. It was late at night and we had decided to go to the park in our town that was closed off for the night. We walked through this wooded area and hopped the stone wall and just wandered around. It was a windy night and we were on the lakefront, so you could hear the waves crashing on the rocks. I started to feel like something was following us. I keep looking over my shoulder and I saw this tall dark figure standing behind a tree. I just kept staring at it to see if it would move because with the wind shadows were dancing all around, but this one shadow stayed still. I asked my friends if they could see it and they couldn't, so I freaked out and demanded we left. After that night, for months after, I would see the shadow. It would be in dark buildings my friends and I would go into. I would see it in my dreams standing outside my house. I eventually was checked into the hospital for a failed suicide attempt. When I got out I had a new look on life, but this darkness just wouldn't go away. I refused. I sleep in my own room but rather with my mom. I hardly ever went into my room anymore. My friend had given me his protection crystal to wear because he was concerned something was attaching itself to me. So the night the demon made itself known was also its last. I was sleeping in my mom's room and woke up out of a dead sleep. We have a street light outside of the house, well, two actually. One lights up my mom's room so you can see out into the living room, and the other shines into the living room so you can see the bathroom door and the hallway into my room. all on which you can see from my mom's bedroom. I sit up and look at the door. The dark figure was covering all of the light. I couldn't see the hallway or the bathroom. I open and close my eyes, but the figure stayed there. In that moment I remembered what my mom had always told me. To pray and God will be there when you need him. So I closed my eyes and screamed in my head, "You are not welcome. Go away from me. Leave me alone. Get out of my house." And followed it with a Hail Mary and an Our Father. When I opened my eyes it was gone. I could see the hallway and the bathroom again. So I went back to sleep. The dreams stopped. I stopped seeing it behind trees. I even started sleeping in my own room. I never had another suicide attempt and even ended up being able to get off the antidepressants they had me on. I lived a normal kid life after that. Soon after all this I met my now fiancé and we have been together for 11 years, own a home, and have pets together. Actually, as I type this, we are on our way home from Disney World. I honestly believed something had attached itself to me in the darkest moments and caused all the bad stuff to happen. Tell me what you guys think. Thanks for reading. Story 9, Jean's Secret. Jean is a weird girl. Well, it's not my own opinion, but it's the collective opinion of everyone in class. But if you ask me, Jean is more than weird. She is beyond weird. She is a girl that is weirder than anything that I have ever known. This was how our story went. She usually stays at the far corner of the class sitting quietly until classes start. She would stay there even during lunch break and she would only leave after the last bell rang. She doesn't talk to any of us. She answers briefly every time teachers ask questions to her. And as far as I remember, I never seen her eat anything. As far as grades go, she is an average high school girl. She isn't that smart that people notice, nor is she dumb that people berate her. She is one of those people that goes under the intellectual radar of every teacher's. She does her homework like everyone else, but never once had I seen her cram nor cheat nor anything that a normal high schooler would do. I tried talking to her once, but it was like talking to a ghost. She never looked my way nor acknowledged my presence. Hey, don't get me wrong, I don't have the hots for Jean. She's a straight-up weirdo, but behind her fuzzy long blonde hair and pale skin, there's a friend that I want to know. She's a loner, and I feel for that kind of person. My parents move a lot, so I got to be the new kid in school in more than one occasion. So I start out in my new school not having friends. I'm also not the outgoing type, nor am I friendly. It's just I'm not really that sociable, so I find it hard making friends. Currently, I'm in my third school this year alone, and it looks like my parents don't have plans on moving anytime soon, so I'm glad I'm getting to have some momentum in making friends. I was the new kid in school, until Jean arrived. 3 months into my new school, she arrived. I still remember her blue eyes scanning the room as she entered. I still remember her fuzzy hair hanging from her neck and her white dress. She spoke in a shy yet stern voice and walked and sat to her seat at the far corner. And since then she hasn't moved. The other girls tried to bully Jean. But no matter what they do, she just ignored them. One time, I was walking to my classroom and saw Jean walking ahead of me. She was then confronted with 3 of the known bullies in school, Enna, Michaela, and Janice. Michaela and Janice said belittling comments to Jean, but she just stood there waiting for them to stop. This pissed the girls off. Then Enna, the biggest girl in the group, pushed Jean. She was strong that Jean toppled to the ground, but first I rushed to help her. "You okay, Jean?" I said as I knelt down picking up her books. Jean remained silent, her blue eyes locked into the 3 bullies. She ignored me and stood. She walked slowly towards the 3 bullies. I watched as she walked to the 3 bullies. A white lioness facing 3 wolves. A small crowd of students started to form behind them, all equally curious. How does the school weirdo face the 3 bullies? I stood and joined the crowd. I was slightly offended, to be honest, that she didn't acknowledge my presence. But I was more curious of what does this new girl have. "What are you gonna do, lil missy?" Michaela said. Jean remained silent, her blue eyes stabbing straight into Michaela's soul. Then I felt it. I didn't know how, or why, but I felt something. It was like radiating warmth that started in my chest and continued to my arms. It was like a silent blower was pressed against my chest. I turned around and I didn't find anyone else fidgeting about the sensation. It was only me. I looked at Jean, and Michaela grew pale. She fell silent, she started screaming. No, no, you stay away from me. Stay away from me, Michaela said. She tripped and fell backward. Fear reflected in her eyes. Everyone fell silent seeing Michaela's change in attitude. Jean was standing silently but triumphantly before her, like a judge condemning a suspect. You all stay away from me. Michaela started to scream and crawl backward. She got up, turned around and started running away from everyone. A puzzled Anna and Janice ran after her. Jean shook her head and breathed in. She took a quick scan around. I could see that relief filled her face. That was until her blue eyes rested on mine. Her eyebrows shut up as she saw me, as if I caught her doing something bad. She quickly gathered her things and walked straight into our classroom. I felt uneasy after that. And that was the first time that I felt that she was more than just a loner, more than just a weirdo. The couple of weeks that followed were pretty much normal. We just heard rumors that Michaela was sent to a mental facility due to the fact that she started seeing things. Anna and Janice disappeared as well. We never really knew why though. Jean remained silent and isolated from all this. But the warmth feeling that I felt during the previous encounter was something that stuck with me. Why did I feel it? Why did Michaela started seeing things? Why did Jean look surprised when she saw me? These questions kept running in my mind long enough for me to consider trying to talk to her. So that Friday afternoon after our classes, after the last bell, I quickly picked up my things and walked straight to Jean. She was still packing up her books. Jean, I need to talk to you, I just blurted it out. Jean froze for a moment, midway placing her books in her bag. It's about Michaela, it's really. She immediately darted past me, through the door and out the school in a matter of minutes. I bit my lip. There really must be something wrong here. She was avoiding me. I went home frustrated. The following week, I made sure that I sat next to Jean during classes. I needed answers from her. Jean was always punctual and never absent. That's one of the mysteries of Jean. She may be a loner, but she always has perfect attendance. As the last bell rang, I faced Jean, as she was quickly packing her things. Jean, I really need to talk to you, I said in a calm way, afraid that I might frighten her. Jean ignored me, but I felt that she wanted to get out of here as quickly as possible. I reached a hand to her shoulder, which she immediately recoiled. Jean. She darted out of the classroom, but this time I followed her. I never really have seen Jean got fetched by her parents. She usually walks home, or at least that's what I assume she's heading. She walked down the sidewalk to a nearby pub. I followed her a couple of paces back. She turned in an empty alley. After a few beats I followed her into the alley. She walked through a series of mazes and passageways behind alleys, and I followed her, not losing her as she progressed. Eventually, she came into an open field, a clearing before the forest near our city. She disappeared into the forest. At this point, I was pacing myself. I was out of breath. We must have walked for 10 miles before reaching the forest. I couldn't believe that Jean lives in a forest. Let alone, she has to walk twice the distance, to and from the school. It was already evening and the moon was on the night sky as I swallowed and followed her into the woods. She was still visible amidst the trees and shadows. She was a white smudge in a black canvas. I hid behind the bushes as I followed her into the woods. Then we reached another clearing. She stopped walking and placed her bag down. Everything was quiet. The only sound was the sound crickets make in the dark. Jean stood in the center of the clearing, her blonde hair illuminating the moonlight, and her white dress swaying in a ghostly fashion against the night breeze. And then she spoke. Come out, Ken. My eyes widen. She knew I was following her. She lead me to this clearing? She turned around and shone her pale face, blue eyes staring into my hiding place. I know you're there. Come out, Ken. I breathe in. I guess the jig is up, so I stood. Okay, Jean. You got me. I smiled and tried to make a joke about it, but Jean's face remained unchanged. She didn't find it amusing. I needed to talk to you. Come closer, she invited. I stepped out of the bushes and into the clearing. I also need to talk to you. But I didn't want to do it with our classmates and everyone else. So instead you let me follow you into these woods. I said, trying not to be freaked out by our dark surroundings and this girl's sudden talkativeness. You could have just left me a note or something. Grab some coffee or hang out, you know. I need to tell you something, Ken, she said. Her blue eyes shining brilliantly against the night hue. I'm listening, Jean, I said. I know you felt something back then. I know you felt what I did, she started. It's the only way that she would leave us alone. What a minute. You're telling me that you did that to Michaela? I said, trying to process the information. You did that? Yes, it was the only way to get her to stop bullying. Jean? I stepped backwards. You better stay away from me. Michaela is in a mental facility, for God's sake. And you're telling me you did that and placed her there? Yes, Ken, what the hell? I felt panic creeping up behind me. Calm down, Ken, she said. Whatever I did to her, I can't do to you. You can't do to me? That's comforting, I said sarcastically. You probably would do something a lot worse, aren't you? She shook her head. I can't do that to you, Ken, trust me. What are you? Who are you? I said defensively, as I felt myself stepping back. I'm Jean, she said simply. I need to tell you something. Please come down. She stepped forward towards me. I stepped back for good measure. You stay where you are, I said. I clenched my phone in my hand, ready to dial 911 in case she drives me crazy or something. Calm down. I won't hurt you, Ken. You have my word. I just need you to see and listen to me. I might not have much time, she said. I swallowed hard. Then to my surprise, she turned around. She drew her blonde hair from her back to the front of her chest, exposing her neck and back towards me. I know there is a lot that you don't understand. So I have to show you. She reached for the zipper on her dress and started unzipping it. I couldn't help but feel in awe as I saw her undoing the back of her dress, revealing her pale yet smooth back. As she finished unzipping her dress, which ended in her lower back, she took her right sleeve from her shoulder and proceeded to reveal the rest of her back. And from what I saw, I almost screamed in horror. There was a vertical thick webbed scar running from the top of her shoulder blade down to her lower back, as if someone burned her flesh with a red-hot iron rod. The scar was twisted and webbed in all directions. It looked painful. And some parts of her scar was discolored. Bluish and blackish marks surrounded the scar. She revealed her other shoulder and presented an identical scar mirroring the first. She gave me an impression that she was tortured, burned and beaten. I almost gagged from her disfigured back. Can you see these, Ken? I saw her blue eyes meeting my disgusted face. I nodded. It's not a pretty sight, isn't it? But Ken, what's important is that these scars are the remnants of my previous life. You were an abused child? I asked. She shook her head. I'm not. I was overworked though, Jean said. These scars are my doing. I did these to myself. So you're suicidal then, I said. Jesus, Jean, you need help. You need professional. I'm okay, Ken, she said softly, still exposing the scars towards me. I'm not like that. She then faced me, her hands holding her dress up against her chest. I was an angel of heaven, Ken, she started. Overworked and underappreciated, I left heaven. I cut off my wings and threw away my grace. I'm no longer a being of light. You're an angel? I said, trying to process the information. Yes, I am. The reason why I lay quiet every day is that I'm still trying to control myself in using what's left of my powers and my urges to stop demons around. You see, we angels were created instinctively to defend against demons. Breaking away from that instinct is what I always deal with. So you're telling me that you're trying to control yourself from turning everyone insane like Michaela? Yes, Ken. What kind of angel are you? Who does that? Was a guardian angel. Whose guardian angel? Yours, she said. That's why you felt the warmth of relief when I used my powers. If you're not my guardian angel anymore, who is? That is the most important thing that I need to tell you, Ken, she started. I don't have the power to defend you any longer. Sooner or later demons will come for you, turn you, corrupt you. What? Panic started building up again. I'm sorry, Ken. Story 10, I'm stuck in a dead-end job. 2 weeks ago, the company I had been employed at for the last 5 years was downsizing, and as a result, a lot of us were laid off. Translation, we want new people that we can pay less money to. I had no money in my savings and barely any in my checking account. I'm not even sure why I stayed at that place, considering it barely paid the bills. I started looking for a new job that day. My friend Jessica asked if I wanted to pick up some extra hours at her job in the meantime. It wasn't going to be much, but it was better than nothing, so I happily accepted. She's the receptionist at some insurance company and told me they needed help in putting old paperwork into their system so that all applications, forms, every paper file would be stored in their system and these files could be shredded. My only job would be to take a document, input the information online, rinse and repeat. I was the only one contracted to do this project. They closed at 5 p.m., I would come in at 6 and stay until 10 at night, 5 days a week. I could still spend my days job searching, and I also hoped that perhaps it could lead to potential employment with them. At this point I was trying to be as optimistic as possible, even though I realized a lot of my bills would be due soon and wondered how long I could subsist on ramen. The place was a 2-story building not far from where I lived. It had a main entrance for guests and employees where guests were buzzed in by Jessica, who manned the front desk, and employees just swiped their ID badges on the sensor and the door would unlock. It also had 2 entrances on the east and west side for employees only that would allow you access after you swiped your work ID. The first day I showed up a few minutes early and a brunette woman buzzed me in. Jessica's shift had already ended almost an hour previously, so I was met in the lobby by a manager who directed me towards the entrance to the 2nd level. The lobby has an elevator and a set of stairs. The manager, who introduced herself as Allison, asked which I preferred and I pointed to the stairs. She had to swipe her ID at the door to the stairs and she led me up to the 2nd floor. The floor plan was pretty straightforward. There were 2 rows of cubicles stretching the length of the floor, ones that lined the windows and ones that lined the dingy white walls. She showed me to a cubicle near the end on the east side of the building. Luckily I got one with a window view. On the desk sat a computer and every other inch was covered in boxes and boxes of paperwork. She gave me an ID and then gave me a brief tour. The bathrooms were located in the middle across from the stairs and elevator. If I went down the stairs closest to my cubicle, there was a break area in case I wanted to get something out of the vending machine. I sighed internally, realizing that vending machine snacks were now a luxury for my broke ass. She let me know that my temporary ID would allow me to badge into the building starting at 5:50 and I would need to leave by 10:15 p.m. as the silent alarm would be triggered starting at 10:30. She gave me a 15-minute tutorial on the system. It was so easy to understand I could do it in my sleep. Allison let me know she would be leaving but to call her if I had any questions. I could hear her car start outside and turned around to watch her car exit the parking lot. Staring at the empty parking lot, I shivered as I realized I was the only one left in an unfamiliar building. I turned some music on from my phone and got to work. Typing out information for an hour straight proved to be absolutely boring, but it was an easy way to earn money that I desperately needed. I stretched and decided to take a bathroom break. I headed towards them, and as I went to open the bathroom door I heard a toilet flush. I jumped a little. I thought I was the only one here. I opened the door and stared at the 3 stalls. Every stall door was open and there was nobody in there. Maybe one of them was broken, I thought to myself. It still didn't stop me from quickly using the bathroom, washing my hands and jogging back to the cubicle, my hands still damp. The rest of the night was uneventful. I left and drove home. I hadn't ate anything since noon when I had some chicken-flavored ramen. I decided for a change I would have the shrimp flavor and scarfed it down once it has cooled a bit. I took a shower and drifted off to sleep, wishing the next day someone would tell me some lost unknown relative had died and left me a large inheritance. The next day was spent submitting applications for multiple companies. This time I decided to get something to eat before leaving home for the temp job. I opened the door to my pantry and closed my eyes and reached my hand out randomly. Ah, shrimp flavor again. Had my life really come to amusing myself by playing ramen roulette? After eating I drove to the insurance building and parked. The parking lot was empty aside from my car. Guess no one puts in any extra time around here. I walked to the east side of the building since it was closest to my cubicle and swiped my ID over the sensor by the door. It beeped loudly and the light turned from red to green. I opened the door and stepped inside. The door to the break area was off to the left, but if you walk to the right you come to another door that leads to the stairwell. I also had to badge into this one and headed up the stairs. It was completely silent inside, the only sound I could hear was my footsteps as I walked to the cubicle. I sat down and booted up the computer. About 30 minutes into my shift I heard a car start. Weird, there were no other car in the parking lot when I arrived, I was definitely sure of that. Thinking that maybe someone was trying to steal my car, I quickly spun around in the chair and peered out the window. My car sat in the parking lot, silent, no other cars around. It must have been a car at one of the businesses on either side. It was so quiet here it made sense to hear something like that, I thought, even though the rational side of me wondered how I could hear it from so far away. Taking a deep breath I decided to go to the break room, if only for a change of scenery. I walked into the open door of the break room and turned on the light. They had one of those Culligan water dispensers and I walked up to it. Grabbing a paper cup I drank some cold water and listened. Still nothing but silence. I took another deep breath. Somehow all that ramen was making me paranoid. I threw the cup into the trash by the water dispenser and turned around. The break room door was closed. That couldn't be. It was definitely open when I went in there and I never heard it close. Turning the handle I walked into the hallway and looked in both directions, no one was around. I heard heavy footsteps coming from directly above. I walked to the door leading to the stairwell and swiped my ID. It beeped loudly and the footsteps stopped. Wondering why on earth I thought it was a good idea, I slowly walked up the stairs. Looking down the row in between cubicles I didn't see or hear anyone. I walked down and looked into each cubicle but nobody was there. I checked both bathrooms and still, no other person was around. If someone was here, wouldn't I have heard them move to another part of the floor and take a different set of stairs down? I shook my head, no, I was just hearing things all together. There were no footsteps and I was just letting my imagination run wild. This was a place of business, silent but harmless. I sat back down at my cubicle and grabbed a new form to input. I worked for the next hour and stopped only when I heard the ding of the elevator. I tried to ignore it and continue working but not even 2 minutes later I heard it ding again. I hesitantly walked over to it. The doors were open and no one was inside. I pressed the down button and it closed, the number at the top going from 2 to 1. I headed back to my desk. Nothing else happened for the rest of the night and I practically ran out of there at 10 o'clock. When I got home I heard my phone go off. It was Jessica who was texting me to ask how I was liking things so far. I told her the work was easy but being there alone was creepy. She replied that it was just nerves and to not let that bother me. I agreed and left it at that. I didn't want to go into anything that happened because she'd just tell me I was overreacting. She wouldn't have been wrong. As I got into the shower I told myself that I needed to stop letting these random occurrences scare me. There was a logical reason for everything. The next day I was highly focused on only paying attention to the stack of papers and computer. I glanced at the clock and before I knew it, it was already 9 o'clock. 1 more hour and I would be done, happy that I didn't let my imagination wander or even let any of the noises from the building settling scare me. As I typed away I suddenly heard this strange echo. Like every time I clicked a key I would hear the click of my fingers hitting the keyboard but twice for every time I hit a key. I slowed down but the typing noise I heard remained steady and sounded like it was coming from the cubicle diagonal to me. I stopped typing and heard it continue. I tried to keep my breath even. I stammered out a soft hello, but there was no answer, only the clicking of keys being typed on. I stood up and walked over to the cubicle, my heart beating faster with every step. Looking around the cubicle wall, I spotted nothing. There was no one sitting there and the keyboard was now silent. I glanced at my watch. It was now 10 o'clock. I grabbed my stuff and drove home. As I took a shower, I decided that I was going to show up early tomorrow, a little after they opened. I was determined to get to the bottom of things because I knew it couldn't be just my imagination. There was something definitely wrong with that place. This time when I parked my car, it was amongst a sea of other vehicles. I started walking towards the main door when I saw someone walking the perimeter of the building. It was an overweight man of average height. He had closely cropped brown hair and dark brown eyes. His blue uniform shirt had a patch on it with the words security emblazoned on it. Just the man I wanted to see. I walked up to him and introduced myself. I told him about some of the events I had experienced the last few nights and let him know I would like to look at some camera footage. I honestly thought he was going to dismiss me as crazy, but he nodded his head and started walking to the door on the west side of the building. We both entered. Looking around the first floor, I could see a few offices lining both walls, running on the same sides as the cubicles on the floor above, all of them with their doors closed. This side didn't run the entirety of the building though, as there was a wall, running north to south to divide it from the rest of the building. A door was in the middle labeled lobby. He led me to a door marked security in the northwest corner of the building. A desk with a computer was in the middle of the room with a chair behind it. In front of the desk was another chair which he pointed to as he walked around the desk. I sat down and put my purse in my lap. I could feel my phone vibrate from a pocket in the front, but I ignored it. The man started clicking away on the computer, his face completely expressionless. I looked around the small room. There were no windows and nothing on the walls, not even a clock. Besides the click of his mouse, it was completely silent. I felt my phone vibrate again. Suddenly I heard a phone ringing. It wasn't my own and I didn't see one on the desk. The security officer pulled a cell phone out of his pocket. It was an old flip phone. He flipped it open and glanced at the screen. He stood up and held one finger up to me, the expression for just a minute. He walked out the door and shut it behind it. I heard the sound of a key sliding into the lock and clicking. What the hell? I stood up and turned around, grabbing the door handle. I turned the handle and started to panic. The door was locked and there was no way to unlock it from the inside. I grabbed my phone and looked at it. There were 2 text messages from Jessica. Here's the exact conversation we had. Jessica, you're here early, what's up? Jessica, why'd you go into that room? Me, a lot has been happening at night, I need answers. How did you know I was here? Jessica, I have access to the cameras, to watch visitors, make sure people don't steal. Seriously, why are you in that room? Me, shouldn't that be security's job to watch camera footage? That's why I'm here. Jessica, security? We don't have any security. It's just me letting people into the lobby, I watch the cameras. Why are you in the utility closet? Me, utility closet? This door is marked security. The security officer let me in and we are going to look at the footage to figure out what the hell has been going on at night. Plaza Jess, don't mess with me right now, I can't take any more. Jessica, Liz, listen to me please. There is no security personnel here. I watched you walk into the utility closet by yourself. Are you feeling okay? Me, no, I am not okay. The door is locked. Come open it for me. Jessica, I'm coming, hold on. I waited, struggling to breathe. My heart was pounding so fast I thought it might explode out of my chest. There was no security here? That can't be. That guy was as real as I am. I strode around the desk and looked at the computer. The screen was black. I moved the mouse around to wake it up but nothing happened. I looked down underneath the desk to see if it was turned off for some reason. The computer tower was off, so I hit the power button. Nothing happened. I turned the tower around and realized there were no plugs going from it into a power source. Standing up, I quickly realized there were no cords connecting the monitor to the tower. The mouse was wireless, but so was everything else. Nothing was plugged in since there weren't any plugs anywhere. I started knocking on the door loudly, hoping someone from a nearby office would hear me. I heard my phone vibrate again. Jessica, the door in the lobby to that side of the RM won't let me in. I'm going to the outside door. A few minutes passed. I tried to keep myself from bursting into tears. My phone lit up. Jessica, I can't get in. The west side door won't open, sensor isn't working. I tried the lobby door and it doesn't work either. Same with the east door. I can't get into the building anymore. This had to be a dream, right? I stared around the room. Apparently this was supposed to be a broom closet or something, and the person who let me in didn't exist. Suddenly a building that didn't seem to have any issues with doors opening has locked my friend out. I started banging on the door again, yelling for help. I grabbed my phone and realized what I should have done a long time ago. I dialed 911. I didn't hear any ringing. I looked down and it looked like the call went through. I had service, but I couldn't hear anything. I texted Jessica, call 911 now. It wouldn't send. It didn't say the message failed. I repeatedly clicked send but nothing would happen. What is going on? Nothing like this has ever happened to me. I live a normal, average life. I go to work, occasionally go out on the weekends. I'm mostly a homebody, your everyday law-abiding citizen. I'm not sure what caused me to do it, but I opened the settings for Wi-Fi. I realized I could connect to their Wi-Fi. I tried messaging Jessica again. Both of us have iPhones, so it should work with Wi-Fi. I hit send and again, nothing happened. I was growing more frustrated and wanted to throw my phone across the room. I started opening my apps. The weather one worked. How the hell was that going to help me though? Even if it's raining outside, I'm stuck in a room. What difference does it make? I opened the Reddit app. I've been typing this story for the last hour or so from my phone. This has become a plea for help. Since I started writing, I still haven't been able to make or receive any calls or texts. I haven't heard any noises and the door is still locked. No one responds to my occasional yells for help. Reddit, please help me. I'm inside the Subaru Insurance Company building in Subaru, Massachusetts. Please get me out of here before nightfall. I don't want to know what's waiting for me tonight. Story 11, God told me to. My mother was a very religious woman. After my dad died, she started to get more involved in the Catholic Church. Much more, in fact. Every Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, we would go to church. She made us pray to a rosary and do our Hail Marys before we went to bed every night. If we forgot them, it would be like hell in our house. Ironic, right? What's worse is that she doesn't care that much about all the other sins we commit. She only really cares about the 7 deadly sins. No, not the Netflix original anime. The sins talked about in the Bible. Here's a few examples. If I told her I thought a girl at my school was pretty, she would accuse me of committing lust. If I was mad at a friend for something, she would tell me I was committing wrath. If I was jealous that my girlfriend was hanging out with other men while I wasn't around, my mother told me I was committing envy. If I ate more than 3 meals a day, to her, I was committing gluttony. If I was proud of a school project I made, I was doing an act of pride. If I asked for a Christmas present, I was committing an act of greed. If I slept past 8:30 a.m., I was a sloth. Nearly everything I did was a sin. The punishments included, but weren't limited to, a beating, usually with a cross, getting locked in a closet for 12 hours, being forced to pray with a rosary with threats like if you don't pray, you'll get beaten. And those were on good days. The woman was a fucking psychopath. One of the reasons I'm atheist today. But, one day in particular, one I'll never forget, was the day my brother and I were hanging out after school. He was younger than me. I was 16 at the time and he was just about to turn 10. I picked him up from school and, since he got good grades, I decided we could go out to eat at his favorite restaurant, Applebee's. We got home around 5:30, my mom was pissed. After she got done yelling at me and my brother, we went to our rooms. Fast forward to 9 o'clock, I heard clanging in the kitchen. I decided to stop doing my homework and do a little investigating. I walk into the kitchen, and I see my mother with a small Virgin Mary statue. You know, she said she was a whore. What? I said with chills running through my spine. She didn't respond. Almost like she couldn't hear me. Mom? I asked. Remember when I gave blood yesterday? I stole it back. She responded. Before I could say anything, she started to pour her own blood on the statue of the Virgin Mary. I stepped forward to at least try to stop her. If you touch me even a little bit, I will kill you with my own breath, Stephen, she said. I stopped dead in my tracks. How could my sweet mother turn from a cheerful woman without a care in the world to a cold-hearted bitch who just poured her own fucking blood on a stupid statue? I stepped back, and I went back to my room. I called 911. My mother started to bang on my door. My creation is impure. I need to purge the universe of it. She was screaming. She was yelling so loud, I couldn't hear the operator. I heard my mother stop. She stopped yelling. Then, I heard her start down the direction of my brother's room. I was frozen. After probably a minute of silence, I dropped the phone, and just sprinted down to my brother's room. Why, tears streaming down my face. Mom, what are you doing? I screamed under my tears. She stopped in the middle of the hallway, and just extended her arm, and I felt the hardest wind hit me, and knock me off my feet, hitting my head on the hardwood floor. I was unconscious for about 3 minutes. When I woke up, I instantly ran to my brother's room. When I got there, all I could see was the Virgin Mary statue beaten into his skull, and a cross plunged into his chest. I could see his little action figures stuck in his hands, and a look of confusion still stuck to his face. As I stood over my innocent brother's body, crying more than I ever have, I could see my mother, laughing quietly in the corner. God told me to, she said. After the police arrived, they took my mom in cuffs. In court they charged her with child abuse and murder. She was admitted to a mental hospital. The thing was, she was laughing the whole time. When she was put in the police car, she said only one thing: you're all gonna fucking die soon. In the middle of the night, 10 days after she was admitted to the hospital, she was gone. The only thing left was a pile of dust. They looked in the dust. There it was. The statue of the Virgin Mary. On the bottom of it, there was something written on it: I am free. The day afterwards, that small town in Pennsylvania, nicknamed Sin City, was failing economically, and hit with a plague. Half the people there died. Luckily I was in a foster family in New York, where my girlfriend moved. Today, I might be married to my high school sweetheart, and the father to a beautiful baby boy, but I miss my brother so much. He haunts my dreams every night. The mere sight of my son even reminds me of him sometimes. I sometimes think that if my dad never died, she wouldn't have done any of this. Sometimes I even think that a higher power took over her body. Sometimes I see that statue in the corner of my eye, covered in blood, and sometimes it would have writing on it. Most of the time, it would say, God told me to.